The lasagna sat untouched in the center of the dining table. Still warm. Still perfect. Still completely wrong. My mother had insisted on this family dinner. Something important to discuss, she'd said, her voice unusually tight. Now it made sense why all 4 of my siblings were here on a random Tuesday night. Before we eat, Dad said, standing at the head of the table, your mother and I have an announcement. Jake leaned forward eagerly. Rachel and Sophie exchanged knowing looks. Tyler scrolled through his phone, barely paying attention. I sat at the far end of the table, wine glass in hand, quietly observing. As you all know, Mom began, folding her hands together, your father and I have been thinking about our future. She glanced around the room, at the high ceilings, the old wooden beams, the walls filled with memories. This house is too big for just the 2 of us, she continued, and the maintenance is becoming overwhelming. The house on Westchester Drive. 6 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms, an acre of land. The house we grew up in. The house my parents believed they owned. So we've made a decision, Dad said firmly. We're going to divide the house among you kids. Jake clapped. That's amazing. Madison and I desperately need more space since the twins were born. Perfect timing, Mom smiled. You and Madison will get the master suite. Rachel raised her hand. What about me and David? You'll get the 2 bedrooms on the 2nd floor, Dad replied. 1 for sleeping, 1 for your home office. Rachel beamed. Sophie, Mom continued, you and Marcus will get the guest suite above the garage. It's basically a private apartment. Sophie squealed with excitement. Tyler, Dad said, you'll get the basement bedroom, we'll renovate it. Bathroom, kitchenette, your own space. Tyler finally looked up. That's awesome. 4 siblings. 4 rooms assigned. 4 lives rearranged without hesitation. I waited. Mom turned to me last. And Vanessa, she said, her smile tightening, we know you're independent, so we thought you appreciate the sunroom. The sunroom. A converted porch. No heating. No real walls. Just glass and light. The sunroom, I repeated calmly. It has great natural light, Mom said quickly, and you're always working anyway. Jake pulled out his phone. Should we start planning the move? Madison's already packing. We could be here next month. Wait, I said softly. The table went silent. Before everyone packs, I continued, setting my glass down, can I ask something? Mom's voice turned sweet. What is it, honey? Who, I asked, is giving away the bedrooms? Dad frowned. Your mother and I, it's our house. I tilted my head slightly. Is it? Silence fell like a weight. We've lived here for 30 years, Dad snapped. You've lived here for 30 years, I replied evenly. Past tense. I pulled out my phone. Dad, when was the last time you checked the property deed? I don't need to check my own house. You do, I said, because things change. I scrolled. Do you remember 2 years ago, when the property taxes were 6 months overdue? Mom's face went pale. That was temporary, she whispered. It was $47,000, I said, plus penalties. Dad sat down heavily. The county was about to put a lien on the house, I continued. You called me crying at midnight. We fixed that, Dad said weakly. I fixed it, I replied. I paid the back taxes, then the penalties, then your home equity loan, $180,000. Jake stared at me in disbelief. And then, I continued, I bought the house from you for the remaining mortgage balance. Tyler's phone slipped from his hand and hit the floor. What? Jake whispered. I turned my phone toward them. This is the county record, recorded 23 months ago. Rachel grabbed the phone, staring at the screen. Owner of record, I said quietly, Vanessa Marie Chin. That's me. No one spoke. I've been paying property taxes, insurance, and maintenance for 2 years, I continued. Roof replacement, HVAC, foundation repairs. Tyler looked sick. But we were going to move in. You were going to move into my house, I corrected. Rachel's voice shook. Why didn't you tell us? When would I have told you? I asked. At Christmas when none of you came, at Easter when only Tyler showed up. Jake pushed back his chair. You can't just own the family house. I don't just own this house, I said, pulling up another document. I own a real estate portfolio worth over $2 million. Sophie's voice trembled. You said you were just an analyst. I am, I replied. A senior investment analyst. I make $220,000 a year. I started investing when I was 26. Mom finally found her voice. You let us believe it was still ours. You never asked, I said. You lived here rent-free while I paid everything. I was protecting your dignity. Dad's face flushed. We're your parents. And I saved you from foreclosure, I said. Both things can be true. My phone buzzed silently under the table. Documents ready. Proceed. I typed one word. Yes. What happens now? Rachel asked softly. Now, I said, standing, you all go back to your actual homes. Mom gasped. You're kicking us out. You can't be kicked out of something you don't own, I said calmly. But we need new terms. Rent, Dad whispered. Market rent is $4,200, I replied. I'll charge $2,500. Mom started crying. Then you need to downsize, I said gently. There are affordable condos nearby. Jake stood up abruptly. We'll sue you. My lawyer will be happy to meet yours, I replied. One by one, they left. The lasagna sat cold. The family dinner was over. The following weeks were chaos. Messages. Accusations. Social media posts painting me as a villain. Jake and Rachel filed a lawsuit, claiming manipulation. Emotional pressure. Unfair transfer. Court day arrived. Their lawyer spoke loudly. Painted my parents as victims. Painted me as cold and calculating. My lawyer spoke quietly. Bank transfers. Tax records. Repair invoices. Signed deeds. Video recorded closing. The judge listened. Then asked one question. Did any of the siblings contribute financially to this property? No one answered. The gavel came down. Case dismissed. Outside the courtroom, cameras waited. I walked past without speaking. My parents moved to a smaller place in Pleasantville. They couldn't afford the rent. They didn't argue anymore. Months later, the house stood empty. 3 offers came in. All above asking. Final offer. $780,000. Cash. I walked through the house one last time. The living room. The kitchen. The sunroom glowing with afternoon light. The space they thought was enough for me. I signed the contract. That night, standing on the balcony of my downtown loft, city lights stretching endlessly below, I checked my portfolio. Numbers growing. Assets multiplying. A future built quietly, deliberately. Sometimes saving your family means standing your ground. Sometimes love means choosing yourself. And sometimes, the room they tried to confine you to becomes the place you rise from. They offered me a sunroom. I built an empire. The story didn't end when the house was sold. That was just the moment everyone else realized I wasn't bluffing. A week after the closing, my phone started ringing again. Unknown numbers. Private callers. Voicemails left in shaky, angry voices. Jake tried first. You think you won, he said in a message, his voice tight with resentment. But you destroyed this family. Enjoy your money. I deleted it. Rachel followed with an email 3 pages long, dissecting my childhood, accusing me of being cold, selfish, heartless, calculating. Not once did she mention the debt. Not once did she mention the foreclosure. Not once did she mention the papers our parents signed. Only feelings. Only blame. I archived it. Sophie was different. She showed up. One evening, as I was leaving my office downtown, I saw her standing across the street. She looked smaller somehow, like the confidence had drained out of her. "Can we talk?" she asked. I considered saying no. I didn't. We sat in a quiet cafe nearby. "I didn't understand," she said finally. "Not really. I thought you were just being difficult." I stirred my coffee slowly. "You thought I should accept less," I said, "because I always had." She looked down. "They all assumed you'd adjust," she admitted. "You always did." "That's the problem," I replied. "They never noticed when I stopped." She swallowed. "Jake is furious. Rachel says you planned this for years." I met her eyes. "I planned not to let our parents lose their home. Everything else was their assumption." She nodded slowly. "I'm not asking for the house," she said quickly. "Or money, I just didn't want to lose you completely." I studied her face. She was the only one who looked ashamed instead of angry. "We'll see," I said. "I need time." She accepted that, which already made her different. The real escalation came 2 weeks later. A letter arrived from a law firm I didn't recognize. Not representing my siblings. Representing a creditor. Old debt. A personal loan my parents had taken years before, something they had forgotten to mention. The creditor was attempting to argue that the house sale proceeds should be frozen. They were trying to claw their way into my assets. I forwarded the letter to Marcus. He called within minutes. "They're fishing," he said, "but this is where it gets interesting." "Meaning?" "Your siblings gave them information," he said flatly, "trying to pressure you." I closed my eyes for a moment. "So they're still trying?" "Yes," Marcus said, "and now we end it properly." Within days, Marcus filed motions. Ownership timelines. Debt responsibility clauses. Clear separation between my finances and my parents' liabilities. The creditor backed off fast. Then Marcus did something else. He sent formal cease and desist letters to Jake and Rachel. Defamation. Harassment. Interference with business relations. Legal language. Cold. Precise. Unemotional. Jake called me that night. "You're threatening us now," he shouted. "No," I said calmly. "I'm protecting myself." "You think a judge will side with you again?" "Yes," I replied, "because facts don't get tired of being true." Silence on the line. "This isn't about money," he said finally. "It's about power." "You're right," I said, "and for the first time you don't have it." He hung up. After that, the noise stopped. No posts. No calls. No threats. Just distance. My parents settled into their new life slowly. Dad called once a week. Short conversations. Weather. Groceries. Doctor appointments. Mom took longer. When she finally called, her voice was quieter than I remembered. "We should have protected you," she said, "instead of assuming you'd protect us." I didn't argue. "I see it now," she continued. "You weren't distant. You were building something, we just didn't bother to look." That acknowledgement mattered more than any apology. Work picked up. One property turned into two. Two into four. I stopped being the analyst in the background and started being the woman people asked before making decisions. At a conference in Chicago, a senior partner pulled me aside. "You're the one who handled that Westchester property situation, right?" I nodded. He smiled. "Clean, ruthless, ethical, that's rare." I returned to my hotel room that night and stood by the window, city lights reflecting back at me. I thought of the dining table, the lasagna, the sunroom, the place where they tried to minimize me. I hadn't just walked away from that house. I had walked into myself, and there was still one last conversation left to happen. That last conversation came sooner than I expected. It started with a call from Dad. "Your mother wants to see you," he said quietly. Not to argue, not to ask for anything, just to talk. I didn't answer right away. "I told her you might say no," he added, "but she asked me to try." I agreed to meet them. Neutral place. A small cafe in Pleasantville. Public. Safe. When I walked in, they were already there. Dad looked smaller than I remembered, like the weight of everything had finally settled into his shoulders. Mom sat stiffly, hands folded, eyes fixed on the table until she saw me. She stood up. "Thank you for coming," she said. We sat. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Mom took a breath. "I need to say something," she began. "And this time I'm not asking you to fix it." I nodded once. "We didn't just underestimate you," she said. "We erased you." Dad closed his eyes. "You were the quiet one," Mom continued. "The capable one. You never needed rescuing, so we stopped paying attention. We thought strength meant you didn't feel things the same way." She looked up at me, eyes wet. "When we gave you the sun room, we didn't even question it. That's what scares me the most." I said nothing. Dad spoke next. "I signed those papers without reading them properly," he admitted. "I told myself it was temporary, that somehow things would go back to the way they were." He shook his head. "That was entitlement, not confusion." Mom nodded. "We told ourselves it was still our house," she said, "because accepting the truth meant admitting our daughter had outgrown us, and instead of being proud, we felt ashamed." There it was. The real reason. "You didn't lose the house," I said calmly. "You lost control over the story you were telling yourselves." Mom flinched, but she didn't argue. "You're right," she said. "And we tried to rewrite it at that dinner, by assigning rooms, by pretending nothing had changed." She swallowed. "I'm sorry." Not rushed. Not defensive. Not followed by a request. Just sorry. That mattered. "I'm not giving anything back," I said. "Not the house, not the money, not the decisions I've made." "We don't want you to," Dad said quickly. "We just needed you to know we finally understand." I studied their faces. They looked older. Tired. Humbled. "I won't pretend this didn't change things," I said. Mom nodded. "We don't expect things to go back." We finished our coffee quietly. When we stood to leave, Mom hesitated. "You don't have to call every week," she said. "But if you ever want to, we'll answer." I gave a small nod. That was the boundary. Clear. Honest. Real. On the drive back to the city, my phone buzzed. An email from Marcus. Subject line: Final resolution. Jake and Rachel had signed a settlement agreement. No admission of wrongdoing. No further claims. No public statements. They were done. I pulled over for a moment and sat there, engine idling. For the first time since that dinner, there was no pressure. No noise. No threat waiting around the corner. Just space. In the weeks that followed, things shifted quietly. Sophie reached out again. We spoke. Carefully. Slowly. Tyler sent a message. "Guess you were always the strongest one. We just didn't like that we couldn't control it." I didn't reply. But I didn't block him either. Work accelerated. A new partnership. A new market. A new level of visibility. People stopped introducing me as someone from finance and started saying my name with weight behind it. One afternoon, standing in my office, I caught my reflection in the glass. Calm. Grounded. Unapologetic. I thought about that dining table. How small they had tried to make me feel. How normal it seemed to them. And I realized something. They didn't break me that night. They revealed me. And the part of the story they never expected was still coming. What came next wasn't loud. No shouting. No courtrooms. No dramatic confrontations. It was quieter than that. Sharper. 3 months after the house sale, I was invited to speak on a panel in New York. Real estate risk mitigation, title restructuring, ethical asset acquisition. The room was full. Investors. Lawyers. People who paid attention when numbers spoke. Halfway through my talk, I noticed a familiar face in the back row. Jake. He didn't look angry. He looked uncomfortable. After the panel ended, people crowded around me with questions. Cards were exchanged, meetings scheduled, opportunities stacked neatly on top of one another. Jake waited until the room thinned. "Didn't know you did things like this," he said finally. I met his eyes. "You never asked." He nodded slowly. "Rachel didn't come," he added. "She said it would be humiliating." "It's only humiliating if you pretend it isn't real," I replied. He exhaled. "You know people talk, right? About you." "I know," I said. "They always have." He hesitated. "You didn't have to take it that far." "That far?" I asked calmly. "I paid debts. I followed the law. I protected what I built." He looked away. "I mean, the way you shut us out." "I didn't shut you out," I said. "I stopped carrying you." That landed. He nodded once, then walked away without another word. That night, I reviewed my portfolio. One property had doubled in value. Another was closing early. The commercial unit on 5th Street had a tenant lined up at above-market rent. Everything was moving. Clean. Controlled. Then the unexpected happened. An email came in from an unfamiliar address. Subject: Due diligence inquiry. A private equity firm had been tracking my acquisitions. Quietly. For over a year. They wanted a meeting. Not a job. A partnership. I sat in the conference room 2 weeks later, glass walls overlooking the city. 3 men across from me, sharp suits, sharper questions. "You have an unusual pattern," one of them said. "You step in where risk peaks, you stabilize, then you exit clean." "I don't gamble," I replied. "I prepare." Another leaned forward. "You handled a complex family property transfer under pressure. Most people would have folded." "I don't negotiate with guilt," I said. "Only facts." They exchanged glances. "We're launching a new fund," the first man said. "Distressed assets, complicated ownership structures, emotional noise." He paused. "We want you leading it." I didn't answer immediately. "Equity stake," he added. "Decision authority, full legal backing." I smiled slightly. "Send the terms." That evening, Mom called. "I heard about the panel," she said softly. "Your aunt forwarded a clip." I said nothing. "You looked confident," she continued, "like you knew exactly where you belonged." "I do," I replied. She hesitated. "I wish we'd seen it sooner." "So do I said, "but wishing doesn't change timing." She sighed. "No, it doesn't." After the call ended, I stood by the window of my loft, city lights stretching endlessly below. I thought about the sunroom again. How they'd assumed I'd accept it. How normal it felt to them to give me less. Not out of cruelty. Out of habit. That habit had cost them control. It had cost my siblings leverage. And it had given me clarity. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need validation. I had something stronger. Position. And the funny thing about position is this. Once you have it, you don't need to explain yourself anymore. People either adjust, or they disappear. The partnership changed everything. Not overnight. Not loudly. But permanently. The fund launched quietly, the way serious money always does. No press. No announcements. Just capital moving into places most people avoided because they were too messy. Messy meant emotional. Messy meant unclear ownership. Messy meant families, partners, heirs, and history tangled together. That was my specialty. I'd lived inside that mess. I knew where people lied to themselves. I knew where paperwork mattered more than tears. The first deal closed in 42 days. The second in 30. By the fifth, word started spreading. Not my name. My reputation. She doesn't blink. She doesn't get distracted. She doesn't get sentimental. What they really meant was this. I couldn't be manipulated. One afternoon, my assistant knocked lightly on my office door. "There's someone here asking for you," she said. "No appointment." "Who?" "Rachel." I didn't answer right away. "Tell her I'll give her 10 minutes," I said finally. Rachel walked in stiffly, like she was stepping onto unfamiliar ground. Her confidence, the kind she used to wear like armor, was gone. "You look busy," she said. "I am," I replied. "You have 8 minutes." She swallowed. "I'm not here to fight," she said quickly. "I'm here because I need help." I raised an eyebrow but said nothing. "David's firm is restructuring," she continued. "They're cutting positions. We might lose the house." I leaned back slightly. "Why are you telling me this?" She hesitated. "Because you understand this stuff, and because I was wrong." I waited. "I told myself you were cold," she said, "that you cared more about money than people. But the truth is, you were the only one who actually did something when things went bad." Her voice cracked. "I don't expect you to fix it. I just didn't know where else to go." I studied her for a long moment. Then I spoke. "I won't lend you money," I said calmly. "I won't co-sign anything, and I won't put my name at risk." Her face fell. "But," I continued, "I can tell you exactly what to do." She looked up. I outlined it. Downsizing. Negotiation leverage. How to talk to lenders. What not to say. What to document. No emotion. No judgment. Just facts. She took notes like her life depended on it. When she stood to leave, she paused. "I'm sorry," she said, "for the sunroom, for assuming you'd just accept whatever we decided." I nodded once. "Don't apologize again. Just don't repeat it." After she left, I didn't feel relief. I felt distance. That was the cost of clarity. Weeks later, Jake tried a different approach. An email. Short. Careful. "I was wrong about you. I don't expect forgiveness. I just want to understand how you did it." I didn't reply. Not because I couldn't. Because I didn't need to. Understanding wasn't something I owed anymore. The fund crossed its first major milestone 6 months in. Returns exceeded projections. Risk exposure stayed low. My name was added to the internal partner list. Not symbolic. Binding. That night, alone in my loft, I poured a glass of wine and stood by the window. I thought about that dinner again. The lasagna. The assignments. The way they spoke about my life, like it was an afterthought. I realized something then. They hadn't underestimated my intelligence. They had underestimated my limits. And once those limits were crossed, there was no going back. My phone buzzed. A message from Marcus. "Just heard something interesting. Your old house resold today." I smiled faintly. "For how much?" 890. I looked out at the city. They saw a house. I saw leverage. And I had finally learned the difference. The news about the resale didn't surprise me. It confirmed something I already knew. That house had never been the asset. I was. A few weeks later, the fund closed its first year. Record performance. Zero legal exposure. Clean exits. At the annual review, the senior partners didn't ask me about numbers. They already knew those. They asked me one question. How do you stay so controlled when things get emotional? I answered honestly. Because I learned early what happens when you don't. That night, I drove through Westchester without meaning to. Past the old street. Past the familiar turn. The house was lit up. Different cars. Different laughter. It wasn't mine anymore. And it didn't need to be. I didn't feel loss. I felt distance. The healthy kind. My parents were settling into their new routine. Dad had joined a walking group. Mom started volunteering at the local library. We spoke occasionally. Not often. But honestly, they no longer asked for help. And I no longer offered it automatically. That balance mattered. Rachel stabilized her situation. She never thanked me again. If this story pulled you in and you want more powerful journeys like this, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps bring more stories of strength,